So imagine for a second that you're a high-ranking official at the United Nations. It's 2018.
Okay, setting the scene. I like
Right.
that.
And you get this letter on your desk.
Yeah.
It claims to have the definitive absolute cure for global warming, war, human greed, just all of it.
Which, sounds great on paper.
Exactly. But then you read the first step to actually deploying this cure, and it requires the complete and immediate abolition of marriage and the traditional family unit.
Yeah, that is quite the catch.
It's wild.
Oh,
Welcome to today's deep dive, everyone. We are unpacking a very real, very documented letter. It was dated November 25th, 2018, and addressed to Mr. Alberto Padova at the UN Economic and Social Council.
right.
And it was written by this individual named Xu Feng on behalf of a group called Lifechanyuan.
And I think it's really important to say right at the top, what makes this document so fascinating to analyze, at least as a thought experiment, isn't about us agreeing or disagreeing with the author's politics or their lifestyle choices.
Right, yeah. We are definitely not taking sides here.
Exactly. We're impartially exploring this because of the sheer audacity of the logic. I mean, they are pitching world leaders with a roadmap that explicitly tells the UN that their multi-billion-dollar efforts like the Paris Agreement or the Kyoto Protocol are basically guaranteed to fail.
Because they fundamentally misunderstand human behavior.
Yes, that's the core of it.
So to really understand this incredibly, unconventional prescription for human survival, we kind of have to start with how the author diagnoses the disease.
Which is pretty bleak, honestly.
Yeah, it's heavy. The letter outlines 8 distinct crises that are currently threatening the human species. And the author labels all of these as entirely unsolvable under our modern way of life.
Unsolvable, right?
So we're talking about overpopulation, human greed and lust, environmental degradation, massive climate deterioration.
It doesn't stop there.
No, it goes on to the staggering waste of natural resources, widespread ecological instability, an ever-increasing refugee problem, and finally, endless global conflicts, whether that's religious wars or, national border disputes.
Now, the standard geopolitical approach usually treats those 8 crises as separate issues, right? Like they require separate departments.
Right. You've got the UN Refugee Agency for Displaced Populations.
Exactly. And the UN Environment Program looking at climate stuff. And the Security Council dealing with the wars. But Yufeng's underlying philosophy completely rejects that kind of compartmentalization.
Yeah, they see it all connected.
Completely. The author views a refugee fleeing a war zone and like a suburban neighborhood over-consuming electricity as just 2 distinct symptoms of the exact same underlying pathology.
And because they view it as one singular disease, the letter basically dismisses literally every single tool we have in the modern diplomatic playbook.
Tosses them right out the window.
Right. Like the author states plainly that you cannot solve these crises by preaching morality. You can't fix them by, passing new international laws or leaning on religion, or definitely not by using military force.
Even redistributing wealth is seen as useless, or hosting endless government summits.
Yeah. Okay, the analogy that comes to mind is that trying to fix global warming with a carbon tax while ignoring the root cause of human consumption, it's like trying to cool down a house by putting ice cubes in front of the AC vent.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
While the furnace is still running on max,
Uh-huh.
Like it's just a Band-Aid on a sinking ship.
That analogy really hits the core of the argument here. As long as the furnace is running, those ice cubes are just going to melt. Xiavang is arguing that human crises cannot be solved by top-down regulation because those regulations are trying to govern a fundamentally toxic foundation.
Right.
So the author demands a complete systemic paradigm shift, a total transformation of what they call our production and life modes.
Which, production and life modes, it sounds like very dry, bureaucratic jargon.
It does.
But the letter is actually talking about the invisible architecture of our daily lives, like how we wake up, how we secure our food, how we work, and most importantly, who we live with.
Yeah, that's the big one, who we live with.
The argument is that if the foundation of human society remains unchanged, the superstructure, so our governments, treaties, economies, will inevitably just keep producing those 8 crises, no matter how many laws we pass.
Which brings us to the real pivot in this deep dive. The thing that turns this from a standard environmental manifesto into a deeply controversial sociological proposal.
Yeah. Hold on to your hats for this one.
If top-down laws won't turn off the furnace, the author points to the specific life mode that needs to be dismantled.
Right. And this is where the letter drops its biggest bombshell. To save the world from ecological collapse and perpetual war, Sefeng tells the UN that we must eradicate traditional marriages and break up the family unit.
It's an incredibly radical stance.
It really is.
Okay.
And the language used in the letter is severe. They call the traditional family the source of human selfishness, the birthplace of human crises, and the headstream of all crime and evil.
It's a profound challenge to basically all sociological norms. Because for centuries, across almost all cultures, the nuclear or extended family has been viewed as the essential building block of a stable society.
Yeah, and I got to push back on this logic on behalf of anyone listening right now,
Mhm.
because, most people consider their family to be their ultimate safe haven, not the source of all evil.
Right, it's where you find unconditional support, usually.
Exactly. So to call it the birthplace of crime feels like a massive logical leap. I mean, how does the author even connect the dots between two people getting married, having some kids, and causing global environmental degradation?
Well, to bridge that gap, we have to look at the psychological and economic mechanisms that the author associates with the family structure. By tying the family unit directly to selfishness, Shuifeng argues that the biological and social imperatives of the traditional family force humans into this constant mode of possessing.
Like predatory competition.
Yes. If your primary biologically hardwired imperative is to protect and elevate and secure resources for your specific spouse and your specific children, you are naturally going to hoard.
You're drawing a circle around a very small group of people and saying, my survival depends on making sure these 4 people have more than enough, even if it means someone outside the circle goes without.
Exactly. And that micro-level hoarding is the engine of the global crises. Think about it. You buy a plot of land and build a fence around it. You purchase a lawnmower that sits totally unused in your garage for 6 days a week just for your specific patch of grass.
Right.
You accumulate excess wealth to pass down as an inheritance. You compete ruthlessly in the corporate world to secure a better zip code, a better school district for your offspring. The author is taking that localized, neighborhood-level instinct and multiplying it by billions of families across the globe.
Oh, wow. Okay, when you put it like that,
Hmm.
it makes the connection to things like the refugee crisis and global conflict way clearer.
Right, because what is a nation?
A macro family.
Yeah.
If a single family hoards resources behind a literal fence, a nation is just a macro family hoarding resources behind a literal border. So when an unstable environment, which is one of the crises, dries up resources in one part of the world, people flee.
But the macro families in other nations refuse to let those refugees in because it threatens the resources they've hoarded for their own citizens, who are really just an extended version of the family unit.
That competitive instinct just scales up.
Yeah.
From the driveway to the geopolitical stage.
Exactly. And the author also delves into the psychological toll this takes on the individual, too. The letter describes the traditional family as a curb chain.
Like for a horse.
Yeah. It's the piece of tack used on a horse's bit to force it to stop by applying, painful pressure to its chin. Shuifeng argues that rather than being a safe haven, the family unit actually prevents people from leading free, happy lives.
Because you're trapped in this cycle of constant anxiety. You're perpetually worried about the mortgage, or the kid's college tuition, or your spouse's health insurance. The pressure of maintaining this isolated, self-sufficient household on a biological island of 3 or 4 people, it just creates misery and fear.
So the author's prescription is a total reversal of this dynamic. The letter states we must shift our production mode from a pattern of possessing to a pattern of sharing.
Moving from competing to serving each other enthusiastically.
Yeah. And the underlying philosophical assumption here is really about human nature itself. The author doesn't actually believe humans are inherently greedy or destructive.
Oh, really?
No, they believe that the structural container of the exclusive family forces us to act greedily just to survive. If you remove the container, remove the artificial boundaries, the compulsion to fight each other for resources vanishes.
Okay, I mean, it's easy to draft a utopian philosophy from an armchair.
Yeah.
Anyone can write a manifesto claiming, oh, if we just shared everything, the world would be perfect.
Yeah.
But what makes this letter to the UN so crazy is that Shuifeng isn't just theorizing. Lifechanyuan actually claims to have built a working prototype of this exact society.
This is where it gets really interesting. They transition from just a philosophical critique to presenting hard data from a 9-year sociological experiment.
Right. The letter details an initiative called the New Oasis for Life, which was set up in mainland China. Over the course of nearly a decade leading up to this 2018 letter, they had over 200 participants cycle through, with about 150 of them living as long-term fixed residence.
And the results they pitched to the UN Economic and Social Council, I mean, they read like a checklist of solved global crises.
Yeah, first and foremost, they achieved their core mandate. Exclusive marriages and traditional families were entirely dissolved within the community.
And following that dissolution, the social metrics they report are extraordinary. They claim the crime rate dropped to absolute zero.
Zero. Which honestly tracks with their logic regarding property. If there's no concept of mine, there's basically nothing to steal.
Exactly. And if there are no exclusive marriages, the author argues that crimes of jealousy or domestic disputes just evaporate.
Wow.
They also report that the physical and mental health of the members drastically improved, and that their overall happiness indices surpass those of citizens in, like, any developed nation.
But I'm guessing the most crucial data points for the UN are the environmental ones, right?
Wow.
And the logistics.
Oh, absolutely. They claim that elder care and child rearing were perfectly managed by the community as a whole. Local pollution fell to near zero, and individual carbon footprints were massively reduced.
Which, the mechanism behind that emission reduction actually makes mathematical sense when you think about it.
Right, run the numbers.
Yeah, like if you take 50 elderly individuals living in a traditional suburban model, you have 50 separate houses. That means 50 separate heating and cooling systems.
50 refrigerators.
50 daily commutes to the grocery store or the doctor. But if you integrate those same 50 individuals into a shared communal living space where kitchens, transit, and resources are all pooled, you instantly eliminate 49 of those heating bills and all those overlapping commutes.
The efficiency of scale applies to literally every aspect of daily life. Shared clothing, shared educational resources, communal agricultural efforts. And what's vital to understand about the author's pitch is that this massive reduction in resource waste isn't achieved through, like, strict discipline or government mandates.
Right. The members of the new oasis aren't obsessively monitoring their carbon footprint just to comply with the UN climate treaty.
No. The lower footprint is just a default byproduct of the lifestyle itself. You don't need a massive, multi-billion-dollar enforcement mechanism to ensure compliance with the Paris Agreement because the community's structural design naturally prevents the emissions from being generated in the first place.
It's like they're claiming to have successfully beta-tested a brand new operating system for human society, and they have the data to prove it to the developers at the UN.
That's how the author validates the claim that the UN's current methods are doomed. You just can't successfully legislate a low-carbon footprint in a global society that is structurally incentivized to individually hoard and consume. The lifestyle has to generate the sustainability organically.
So if this 150-person experiment in mainland China was such a resounding success, if they genuinely cracked the code on zero crime, seamless elder care, near-zero pollution, it brings up the ultimate question. Why does Lifechanyuan even need the UN?
Right. Why write the letter?
Yeah. Shuafeng is writing to Alberto Padova with a very specific, very ambitious ask.
Because the author is acutely aware that a 20 to 50-person commune is just a localized anomaly. To actually impact the survival of the human species, this model requires rapid, massive scalability.
So the proposal outlines the next phase. They want to create a larger 300-person model of the new oasis for life. And they want this new community to be a true demographic melting pot, featuring residents from diverse religious, cultural, national, and ethnic backgrounds.
And Shuifeng offers 3 potential locations for this prototype: mainland China, the United States, or Zimbabwe.
Why specifically those 3?
Well, the selection of those specific countries is a highly deliberate geopolitical stress test. So you have mainland China, representing a historically collectivist culture with rapid industrialization, which also serves as the origin point of the initial experiment.
Makes sense.
Then you have the United States, which is arguably the global epicenter of hyper-individualism, capitalist consumption, and, like, the apex of the suburban nuclear family ideal.
Oh, wow. Yeah. If you can convince 300 people to abandon private property and marriage in the U.S., you basically prove the model can survive the most hostile cultural environment possible.
Exactly. And finally, Zimbabwe represents the global south, a developing nation with a complex history of resource extraction, colonial legacy, and shifting infrastructure. By proving this 300-person model can thrive in any of these vastly different climates, Lifechanyuan would demonstrate that their solution isn't just a cultural fluke, it's universally viable.
But the logistical hurdles of pulling that off, I mean, that explains why this letter landed on the desk of the UN Economic and Social Council.
Oh, yeah. The red tape would be a nightmare.
Right. because Lifechanyuan states they're willing to finance a project themselves, choose the location, follow local laws. But you can't simply gather 300 diverse citizens from around the globe and drop them into the U.S. or Zimbabwe without hitting massive bureaucratic walls.
They need the UN's unparalleled diplomatic leverage. The author explicitly asks the UN to persuade the host government to grant land access and, crucially, to provide the necessary visas and allow free movement for foreign participants.
They want a sanctioned, highly visible international mandate so they can build a template that the entire world can observe.
And the urgency behind this request is driven by a concept the author calls the inertia of traditional thinking.
Okay, to visualize this inertia, think about a massive, sprawling city built entirely around the automobile.
Right.
Even if every single citizen in that city wakes up tomorrow and collectively realizes, oh wow, cars are destroying our air quality and our health, they can't just stop driving.
No, because the grocery store is still 10 miles away across a massive highway.
Exactly. The zoning laws still separate housing from commercial districts. The entire infrastructure demands the use of the car. The societal momentum is locked in.
And that is exactly what the author is warning the UN about. Human civilization is trapped in that exact kind of infrastructural and cultural inertia. Even if the global population recognizes that our endless consumption and territorial family structures are driving us toward, ecological and societal collapse, our economies, our laws, and our daily habits will just carry on for decades.
The momentum of our current life mode will basically push us over the cliff before we can even hit the brakes.
Therefore, Lifechanyuan argues they are fighting a terrifying biological clock. They need the UN to legitimize this new operating system immediately, so it can be replicated millions of times across the globe before the inertia of our traditional thinking literally renders the planet uninhabitable.
Which the author punctuates this massive request with the brilliantly deployed proverb. They write to the UN, "It is better to teach people to catch fish than to give them some fish."
Which is a profound critique of the UN's entire operational model, if you think about it.
It really is. The UN spends its days distributing emergency relief funds to war-torn regions, sending food aid to areas devastated by climate change, deploying peacekeepers to border disputes.
The author is essentially telling world leaders that they are running an exhausting, endless global charity, just constantly handing out fish to a dying world.
Yeah, and creating this 300-person new oasis is pitched as teaching the world to fish. It's a localized, self-sustaining mechanism that prevents the disasters from occurring in the first place.
The ultimatum delivered to Alberto Padova is incredibly blunt. If the UN ignores this proposal, they are condemning themselves to an eternal game of whack-a-mole, just rushing from one catastrophe to the next because the underlying mode of living will just keep generating new crises.
It's wild.
Yeah.
And the author signs off by stating they look forward to encouraging news, placing the fate of the human species squarely on the UN's desk.
It forces a remarkable confrontation with our most deeply held assumptions about how society has to be organized. We just assume that the nuclear family, private property, and individual wealth accumulation are the immovable bedrock of human existence.
Right.
But this document dares to suggest that they are merely a flawed software program, one that is currently crashing the hardware of our planet.
This deep dive has honestly taken us on quite a journey. From a letter dismissing the most powerful climate treaties on Earth to the radical proposition of abolishing marriage to cure human greed.
Yeah.
Through the data of a 9-year utopian prototype in China, all the way to a pitch for a UN-backed global reset.
And I think the most lingering provocation from this entire analysis isn't necessarily the debate over whether communal living can scale to 8 billion people. No, it's that haunting concept of societal inertia. The author asks a question that every listener really should consider. Even when confronted with the undeniable reality that our current modes of production, consumption, and territorial division are accelerating ecological deterioration and global conflict, do we actually have the capacity to change?
Wow. Are we capable of dismantling the infrastructure of our own isolation before it's too late? Or are we simply, too attached to our individual houses, our exclusive circles, and our personal possessions to survive the crises we've created?
It's a heavy, profound question to walk away with.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into one of the most unconventional proposals ever to cross a desk at the United Nations. Keep questioning the invisible structures of the world around you. Until next time.